Welcome to the channel, and in this video I'll be ranking the Friday the 13th series. It's one of my favorite franchises, and there isn't really a film in this series that I don't like. I have a few qualms with the movies at the bottom of my list, but for the most part, this is a series that I enjoy marathoning. Along with this ranking, I'll be showcasing a couple box sets that I own, along with some single releases that I have. So let's get into the video. Coming in at number 12 is Jason Goes to Hell: The Final Friday. This comes in at the very bottom for the many plot holes this movie has. If you haven't seen this movie, they blow up Jason in the beginning in a fun opening sequence. The rest of the movie sees Jason hopping from body to body till he becomes his lumbering self once again. This opens up a lot of problems, like why does nobody who is now possessed by Jason act like Jason? One clear example of this is the shaving scene. The coroner, who is possessed by Jason, straps a man down on the table, naked by the way, and proceeds to shave the man. Not once in the previous films have we seen Jason take the time to give a victim a good shaving just before killing them. The director Adam Marcus's reason for this scene is simply because people would talk about it. So on one hand he succeeded, but on the other hand it simply is out of character and makes zero fucking sense narratively. This movie also lacks a central protagonist. Like, we're introduced to Jason's sister we've never knew about, which is fine, but she gets killed off halfway through the movie, and her daughter becomes the hero of the film, even though she's barely developed for us to give a shit once the story shifts towards her. There's more I can dive into about this train wreck of a movie, but I'll do that another time. There are things I like. I do enjoy John D. LeMay in the movie, and he's the only character I gave a shit about. The main reason this movie gets any praise is for its makeup effects. K&B worked on this movie, and their work is incredible. Some of the kills are great, and the melting man sequence is the highlight of this movie. This movie also famously teased Freddy Krueger at the end, but that movie didn't come to fruition for 10 more years. Also, the unrated version of this movie is the one you should watch. Next is Jason X. I didn't like this film at first because I just hate it for how fucking cheap it looks, and it is so dated, but it's just grown on me with each subsequent viewing. I can just accept it now as just cheesy fun. The film's shortcomings are still a little harder to look past, like the lame production design, the horrible CGI, and the atrocious costume design as well. The characters dress like they came off the set of Xenon Girl of the 21st Century, if anybody else remembers that movie. I wouldn't be surprised if they used the same sets to just save a few bucks on this production. This movie was put in production as a way to keep the franchise relevant, as the studio was still trying to put a Freddy vs. Jason movie together. Although once the studio saw this movie, they put it on the shelf and it was kind of forced to release it because it just leaked on the internet. What I do like about the film is its tongue-in-cheek nature. It's fully aware of what it is, and while the humor might not always land for me, I can still appreciate its self-awareness. I also enjoy David Cronenberg's cameo in this film, and Uber Jason is also a cool concept. It also has one of the most memorable kills in the franchise with the liquid nitrogen head smash. Coming in at number 10 is Freddy vs. Jason. What holds this movie back is that this works better as an Elm Street movie more than a Friday the 13th movie. Freddy is the one driving the plot forward, and Jason just kind of lumbers in and out of the movie. I don't particularly care for their portrayal of Jason. First off, they really like to show his eyes for some reason in this movie, and with his lack of intensity, he just looks like he's fucking sleepy throughout this whole film. I don't want to put all the blame on Ken Kirzinger since he was more than likely just doing the direction he was told, but this is my least favorite portrayal of Jason. Also, Jason being afraid of water, like, get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. Haven't you seen part 6? I can still enjoy the film as this big screen wrestling match of two of horror's biggest icons. Their fight is pretty entertaining, even if it does go a little over the top. They do give Jason the bulk of the kills in this movie, the bed kill being obviously the best one. I'm happy this movie got made since it was stuck in development for at least a decade. And if you're a fan of this movie, check out the book Slash of the Titans. It details this movie's journey it took to get made and breaks down all the various scripts and treatments that were made for this movie. For number 9, I have Jason Takes Manhattan, and this movie is similar to Jason X, because the first time I watched it, I just thought this movie kind of sucked. It's really grown on me over the years, and I wouldn't argue with someone who places this movie at the bottom of their list, because this movie definitely has its fair share of problems. I mean, the main one being its misleading title. The movie takes place primarily on a boat for a good chunk of this movie, which wasn't the filmmaker's original intention. I mean, budget cuts took away most scenes that took place in Manhattan, but I'll say the one scene they were able to shoot in Times Square is pretty fucking cool and definitely iconic. Also, I gotta shout out Dark Side of the Night by Metropolis. That song is my fucking jam at the moment. Kane Hodder returned as Jason, and while I appreciate what he brought to the role, they did Jason dirty with that fucking face reveal. Holy shit. It looked like his face was sculpted by a 4th grader. The ending of the movie is also pretty terrible, with Jason being hit by a wave of toxic waste and reverts back to being a child, I guess. For some reason, I just enjoy how bad this movie is. It definitely falls under so bad it's good category for me. Number 8 in my ranking is the original film from 1980. This is the one horror franchise where I feel like most of the sequels are just far superior than the original. I mean, I still enjoy this movie, and it's a perfectly fine slasher, but if this was a standalone slasher film, I'd still take films over this like Halloween, Black Christmas, The Burning, My Bloody Valentine, The Prowler, Blood Rage, and The Mutilator, to name a few. This movie did set up the lore that would set up a lot of its great sequels, but what I like about this movie is obviously Harry Manfredini's iconic score. Tom Savini did all the special effects, and they're great, but some just don't hold up as well now, especially in HD. The only real problem I have with the movie is that it's set up as a whodunit, but the actual killer is never seen in the film until the reveal. So you're given a couple red herrings, but it turns out to just be Pamela Voorhees, who we've never met. It doesn't really bother me now. Her beheading is pretty cool, along with the final jump scare of Jason popping out of the lake. For number 7, it's going to be Friday the 13th in 3D. The movie where Jason dons the hockey mask for the first time. It's crazy that the iconography of this franchise was introduced in the 3rd movie. This is another fun entry in the series, but it has the added gimmick of being filmed in 3D, which just does not age well whatsoever. For one, everything is slightly out of focus because it was shot in 3D, so the movie just looks pretty bad. And then there's also all the shots where they have characters doing something that puts an object right in the frame for that woo added 3D effect. This movie also has a pretty sweet disco theme that plays during the opening credits. Richard Brooker does a great job as Jason. He's super imposing and really laid the groundwork of what we think of when it comes to who Jason is. The kills in this movie are pretty solid. The head crush with the eye popping out is sweet, although in HD it looks just a little wonky. Coming in at number 6 is Part 5, A New Beginning. This movie has grown on me over the years. I even used clips from this movie in a skate video I made a few years ago. The twist in this movie doesn't really bother me like at all. In fact, I think Roy Burns does a pretty good job as a copycat killer. A lot of kills were censored due to the MPAA, but there's some solid ones like the kill with the garden shears and the beheading when Junior is on his dirt bike. There's also the kill when Miguel Nunez Jr. dies and gets stabbed while he's on the shitter. That was pretty funny. The character of Ethel is one of my favorites in the entire franchise, and I laugh every time when she calls that vagrant one fucking ugly man.
He's one fucking ugly man.
I don't know why, I just find that hilarious. The movie also features a great dance scene with the goth character, which is one of the cons of this film. The characters are barely developed and are pretty one-dimensional. I couldn't tell you half of their names, but it's still a movie I find myself going back to more and more over the years. For number 5, I had the remake from 2009. I really enjoy this remake, and of the remakes of the big 3 horror icons, this is easily my favorite. The movie is pretty notorious because of its 25-minute opening, where the movie sets up a group of characters as if they are the characters we're going to follow for this film, but then Jason proceeds to kill them all, and then the title card comes up, and then the movie actually starts. Well, I guess it starts all over again, and we're introduced to a new group of 20-something-year-olds. Derek Mears plays Jason, and this is hands down my favorite portrayal of the character. He's just absolutely terrifying, and that one shot where he's running up to Whitney with the machete, to me, is one of the best shots in this entire series. The characters aren't well developed, but I do enjoy Trent. Travis Van Winkle is really good at playing an asshole. He also played an asshole in one of my favorite comedies, Accepted. The kills are pretty solid, and there's a total of 13 too. I was a little bummed Danielle Panabaker's character didn't live, but it's a good twist since she's your stereotypical final girl. I could have used more callbacks to Harry Manfredini's original score, but other than that, it's another enjoyable entry in this franchise. At number 4 is Part 7, The New Blood. This is probably higher on my ranking than most others, but for some reason I find myself going back and watching this more often than most other entries. It has its fair share of problems. The characters aren't well rounded, but the majority of them are actually pretty memorable. The ending is pretty fucking dumb, with Tina's dead dad rising from his watery grave and dragging Jason back down into the lake. And all they did was throw some mud on the actor instead of him actually being a decomposed corpse. Also, all the kills were heavily censored by the MPAA. I think knowing all the problems this film faced has made me appreciate this movie even more. It also features the debut of Kane Hodder as Jason, who would go on to play the character in parts 8, 9, 10, and the video game from 2017. This is also my favorite look for Jason. The director John Carl Buechler was a makeup effects artist, and he just absolutely killed it with this design of Jason. I don't collect many NECA figures, but when they announced a Part 7 Jason figure, I just had to get it, which then I couldn't leave him on a shelf by himself, so I ended up getting a Michael Myers and a Freddy Krueger to go with him. This movie also has one of the best final acts, well, sans the ending like I mentioned. Tina, who has telekinetic powers, proves herself to be a formidable foe for Jason, and their fight at the end is pretty awesome. Coming in at number 3 is Part 2. Jason steps into the role of the killer in this movie, and while he doesn't have his trademark hockey mask, I think Sackhead Jason is still a pretty cool look, even though you could say it is a ripoff of the movie The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Steve Miner took over directing duties and made a film that easily surpasses the original, in my opinion. This movie doesn't feel slow because it has a really good pacing to it. Ginny, played by Amy Steele, is probably the best final girl in this series. Her putting on the sweater...
Jason, Mother is talking to you!
This is an iconic scene in the series. The best kill in the movie is easily for poor Mark. The dude gets a machete to his face and then takes a ride down a steep staircase. The final jump scare might not be as great as Part 1's, but it's still effective. This movie also gets extra kudos for being shot in Connecticut. I'm from New England, so any movie that films there gets a little bit of extra credit from me. The only real criticism I have is that they were still just figuring out the Jason character, so he's not the unstoppable force that he would become. But that doesn't take away from my enjoyment of this movie. Coming in at number 2, which could be interchanged with number 1 depending on the day, but as I'm recording this, I'm going to go with Part 6, Jason Lives, at the number 2 spot. Part 6 is easily the most fun in this series. It's the Friday the 13th movie I've seen the most for that reason. It continues the Tommy Jarvis storyline, and Tom Matthews is great in the role, and this is my favorite incarnation of that character. The movie has a little bit of a meta quality, and Kevin Williamson said this movie was an influence on him when he wrote the first Scream movie. Some of the kills were neutered by the MPAA, like the sheriff getting folded in half and Jason's triple decapitation. CJ Graham is solid as Jason. The climax is also pretty fucking dope in this movie, with Tommy trying to drown Jason in the lake, and they're surrounded by this ring of fire, only to have Megan save the day by breaking Jason's neck with the boat motor. Also, I gotta mention the song Alice Cooper did for this movie. He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask.
Yeah, 'cause he's back. He's the man behind the mask.
I love that song and will always listen to it play out during the credits. Coming in at number 1 is Part 4, The Final Chapter. This to me is the quintessential Friday the 13th movie. Odd saying that about the 4th movie in the franchise though. Jason is fully realized in this movie, and he's played superbly by Ted White, who just crushes it in the role. The movie has a lot of characters, and they do a good enough job at fleshing out most of them. Corey Feldman plays the young Tommy Jarvis, and Kimberly Beck plays his sister Trish, and I like that they switched it to a brother and sister taking on Jason at the end. The other memorable character this movie has is Crispin Glover as Jimmy, and I only wish I could dance like him. All of the teens are pretty likable, and there isn't a stereotypical asshole in this group. Tom Savini returned to do the special effects and outshines his work on Part 1. Luckily, his work wasn't too censored, since we see most of the kills in their full glory, especially the death of Jason when his head slides down the machete. Before I wrap up this video, I wanted to shout out the documentary Crystal Lake Memories. If you like these movies, then this documentary is for you. It's an extensive documentary that goes through the entire franchise, including the TV show. It's about 5 hours long, and it's worth every minute. And lastly, I want to give some love to the video game from 2017. I spent so many hours playing that game, and even though the game was a bit broken at times, I still had so much fun playing it. It also kind of reinvigorated my love for the franchise. I have so many fond memories, and it was such a shame the game didn't have a longer lifespan due to the lawsuit that halted any new content for the game. Thank you for watching this video. Leave a comment with your ranking or how does mine compare to yours. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a movie time.
Take your best shot. Motherfucker.